Hi everyone, this is Ravi. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So this is our lesson 15 on test project automation concepts. So in this lesson, I'm going to teach you a very important concept called Docker containers. So basically, I'm going to teach you how can we run test project automation tests in Docker containers instead of in your Windows physical machines. So I'm going to teach you step by step how can we install Docker in your system, and then how can you install test project agent in the Docker container, and then how can we trigger the test runs of your automation tests in Docker container. Okay, and also I'm going to tell you what are all the different advantages of the Docker containers. What are all the advantages of running your automation tests in Docker containers. Okay, stay tuned. Please do subscribe to the channel, click on bell icon. You'll receive notifications whenever I publish more videos on these concepts. Thank you. Okay, so why do we need to set up a test project agent on Docker? So what is the use? So it's simple, it's very easy and very quick to set up the test project agent on Docker, and it's very easy for us to run the automation test scripts. And you can use a single command to set up Docker container with your test project agent, and also you can set up a multiple browsers that is required to perform cross-browser testing. And you need not to have a separate physical machines with separate OS and browsers, right? So if you have a container, you need not to have a separate machine altogether with operating system and your browsers. You just need a server where you can create multiple containers, and while creating multiple containers, you can by default set up your test project agent, and also you can by default set up your required browsers in the container itself. You need not to have a separate physical machine with operating system. And then the created container, and create a container when required and remove after execution. That means you can create a container whenever it is required. So your execution is done, immediately you can remove the container so that the resource utilization will be very proper. So you need not to have a burden on the server even though you're not executing the test cases. So whenever you want to execute test case, then and there itself you create a container, execute the test cases in the container, and immediately remove your container. And then you can also use permanent container or a temporary containers, right? So basically I'm going to explain you how can you create a permanent container, Docker container, and temporary Docker container. Okay, so you have advantages and disadvantages of permanent Docker container and temporary Docker containers. Okay, how can we create a permanent Docker container and run your test project tests in permanent Docker container? How can you create a temporary Docker container, and how can you run the test project tests in the temporary Docker container? Okay, I'm going to explain you. And what are the steps that we need to follow in setting up the Docker? First, you need to install your Docker in the machine, and then you need to set up test project agent in Docker. So how can we set up test project agent in the Docker? First, you need to create an API key in the test project for Docker and get that API key for the Docker. And then you need to create a test project volume folder in your machine. And then you need to create a permanent test project agent, either permanent test project agent or ephemeral test project agent. What do you mean by ephemeral test project agent? Which is a temporary test project agent. Okay, so now let's jump onto the system and see how can we perform all these actions and operations step by step by using TestProject Automation tool. Okay, so let's jump onto the system. Okay, so this is my test project. Okay, I just logged into TestProject IO, and then if I go to agents, currently I have only my Windows agent up and running. Okay, so first, what is our first step? Install Docker. So how to install Docker? All you need to do is docker.com, right? And then go down and click on get started. And if you see here, I have download for Windows, download for Mac, download for Linux, right? I'll be selecting download for Windows and then click on download. As soon as you click on download, a .exe file will be downloaded. So I already have this desktop .exe file, right? Let's go back to downloads. This is my download folder. So this is what the .exe file that is downloaded from docker.com. Okay, you just need to double click on this and then follow the instructions displaying on the screen. It's very easy. You just need to follow the instructions that shows you on the screen and click on next. Okay, so that will complete your installation of Docker. Okay, and once your installation is done, what is our next step? Our next step is setting up TestProject agent in the Docker. For that, first we need to have an API key. In the test project for Docker, right? So let's go back to our test project and then go to integrations, click on API, click on API key. Now let's generate an API key for Docker API key. I'm naming it as Docker API key. Click on next. So now, do you want to give an access for all the projects or a specific project? You can select here. So I want to give for all the projects. So you need to select on unrestricted and then click finish. So as soon as you click finish, it generates one row here with a key. So what is the key? This is the key. Okay, I want to copy the key. Okay, keep the key ready. Okay, so now, so to install the agent, let's go back to test project. And if you go here, earlier in my previous videos, when we are actually installing the agent on Windows, we selected this, right? Or if you want to install on Linux, you need to select this. Now, if I want to install on Docker, click on this. It will route you to the hub.docker.com. So where you will have all the instructions to install your agent on the container. Okay, if you scroll down, so this is your agent creation for the permanent agent, including the volume. Okay, so here this is persistence, which is a permanent agent with volume mount. Okay, so if you see, this is my volume mount. Okay, so copy this and paste it in your notepad. Okay, so you need to remove these extra spaces. Remove the extra spaces. Okay, now if you see API key, you need to replace with your API key. Delete this. I already copied the API key. So let me copy here and then paste the API key here. Done. What is your alias name of your agent? I want to name this as my Docker agent. Okay, and what is the volume folder? So I need to keep a full path of the folder. So if I go to desktop, I've already created one test project agent. Okay, let me delete all these files from here. Okay, so this is my empty test project folder, which I would like to use this as a volume. Okay, copy this folder. Okay, empty folder you need to create and then replace with your full path of the empty folder. Okay, That's it. I think this is what you need to do, and then copy this command. Okay, go to command prompt. So before running this command, I want to show you one thing. Okay, you need to make sure that docker -v, it shows you the docker version that is installed. If you see here, it installed docker, or you can specify docker version, sorry, docker version. So it shows you all the details. Okay, and then also if you click on if you type docker space ps, which shows you what are all the containers that you have in the docker. Okay, so let's see, as soon as you install the docker, you can see one docker desktop. Okay, you can observe there also. So if you see here, the desktop is open. If I go to containers, currently I don't have any container, it's empty, right? So that's why when I'm entering the command here, when I'm entering the command, it shows docker ps. Currently I don't have any container, containers are empty, container is id is empty, image is empty, everything is empty. Or if you need a specific docker ps hyphen a hyphen q, which displays a specific container id. So if I want to get only container id, I can get the container id. Currently I don't have any container, that's why it's showing me empty. Okay, so now let's go back to this command. Okay, it's a either you can execute the command this way, or you can execute this command in a single liner. So then let me just go back. So if you see here, I have made that command into a single line. Okay, I want to copy this single line command, copy this, and then run the command in the command prompt. Okay, so let's paste this. Before run the command, I want to show this in the test project. In my test project, if I go here, I don't have any agent called my docker agent. See, I don't have any, I have only one agent, which is Windows, my Windows machine agent. Okay, so now run this command. As soon as you run this command, see at the back end, a new agent should be up and running. Okay, so it's obtaining the execution configuration for the agent, my docker agent. So it's going to install all the components of your agent, test project agent. So as soon as it installs, it's going to show you my docker agent. See, now a my docker agent is created here. If you see the symbol, it shows you docker symbol. Here I can see your Windows symbol, right? It is your docker symbol which is ready now, right? So docker agent is up and running now. This is a permanent agent. Okay, unless you remove this agent, it's not gonna remove automatically. So now let's go back to project and go to, so I have created one job here. So if you want to understand how to create job, please do visit my previous videos. Okay, we already have one job. Okay, where, let me do one thing. Okay, so this job, so let me edit this job. Okay, let me edit this job and then click next. If you see here, I want to select the agent just now I created. What is the agent? My agent that I created is my docker agent. I can select this. If see, I don't have any browser in for this agent. That means this is not my Windows agent. This is my docker container agent. Under container, I don't have any tests. That's why I cannot execute. Okay. So once you create the container, you need to basically install your browsers. But don't worry, I'm going to cover this in my next session. So it's not very difficult for us to install the browsers. So when you are actually creating a Docker agent, you can, within the single command itself, you can also pass the parameters of the browsers, which installs your browsers in the container. And you can use those headless browsers to execute your test cases. So that I'm going to explain you in the next part 2 sessions. This is our part 1 lesson, and then I'm going to explain that in part 2. Okay. So now we have created a permanent agent here, right? And if you see, go back to my Docker desktop. Now I can see, earlier it was empty. Now I can see one agent is up and running, right? So now I want to create a temporary agent. I'm going to explain you how can you create a temporary agent. Okay, so let's go back to again hub.docker.com. If you see here, if you scroll down, you can see persistence. Sorry, I can see that ephemeral instance, which is a temporary instance. So how to create an ephemeral instance? So this is the command you need to execute, where the volume is not there. If you see, the only difference is there is no volume. Copy this. Let me paste it here in the same. If you see, the difference is, only difference is hyphen rm. That means rm is a remove. So what it will do, as soon as you execute this, as soon as the work is done, the agent will be removed immediately. Okay, so that means this agent is actually associated to a particular job. So let's assume you want to execute one of the job that we created. Okay, let's assume you want to execute this job, Docker agent. This is one, or HRM test job. So you'll be providing the job ID, and then you will be providing your API key that we already provided here. Okay, let me copy the same API key here, because API key for the Docker is same, right? Copy this, paste it here. What is the job ID? Okay, remove this job ID. Let me take the job ID. So if you see here, this is my job. Let's assume I want to take this job. Okay, copy this job ID from here, copy ID. I named the job as a Docker agent. So you can name this as HRM test agent or whatever you want to name it. Okay, and then paste it here. Okay, take the job ID, replace the job ID, and then remove your spaces as we did earlier. Remove the spaces, right? And then you need to copy this and paste it. Okay, before that I just see I made that into one single liner here. Same thing, Docker rm represents remove. That means I'm actually using temporary agent. I'm creating a temporary agent with a job ID. Okay, you need to copy this. So before I execute this command, I want to remove the agent that is currently existing, right? Because we created one agent in the permanent agent. If you see here, Docker PS, if I enter this, now I should get one agent. If you see here, I already have one agent. Agent ID is this. I need to remove this, stop the agent and remove this agent before I execute this command, right? So let me remove this agent. How? Docker. So let me execute a ps hyphen a hyphen q, which gives me the ID of the agent. So this is my ID, Docker ID. Copy this Docker ID, container ID, sorry, container ID. Okay. So now what should I do? Docker stop, provide the container ID. So it's going to stop the container, and then you need to remove the container. So it is stopping the container. It stopped. Now Docker rm the container ID. Okay. Sorry. So let me try this. Docker rm container ID. So it's removed the container ID. If I execute the ps-a, now I should get empty. I should not have any ID. See now it's empty. I don't have any container now. I removed the container. Now I want to execute this for the temporary agent. Okay. So when I execute this, it's gonna create a temporary agent. Before that, let me go here. Okay. Let's go to this agent now. So my Docker agent. Okay. So now let me run this command now. Okay. So it should create a temporary agent. Okay. The temporary agent name is a random name will be created by Docker. Okay. Right click on this, click on enter. So as soon as you click on enter, so it starts creating a ephemeral agent. Okay, so if you see, observe here closely, a new agent will be appearing on your screen and it will try to execute. See, if you see, this is my new agent. Again, it has a Docker symbol, right? See, this is ready now, this agent. The name is like a random name, agent, and then with the ID of that particular agent. Now, it will try to execute the job, but it will not be able to execute. See, if you see, there are errors. It is not able to execute the job because if you go back to this agent, if you see here, the browsers are empty. I don't have any browser to execute at all. So that means I just executed a command to install an agent into a container, a temporary agent into a container, but not the browsers, right? So now let me close this. And now if you go back to agents, let me refresh this, okay? If I go to agent again, this agent will be removed. See, it's disconnected, and then by default agent will be removed also. Let's see, I'm refreshing. See, now I can see my Docker agent still in my test project, but I don't see the temporary agent that I created just now. That means it's a temporary agent. It exists while executing a job. Once the job execution is done, by automatically the agent will be removed, right? So that's the difference between your temporary ephemeral agent and persistence agent. Okay, so in the persistence agent, I'm not using RM to remove, I'm not using the volume, sorry, in persistence I'm not using RM, but I'm using volume. In ephemeral, I'm basically using RM and then I'm using my job ID to run, right? So once the job ID is run successfully, it's going to remove the agent. Okay, so hope you all understand the concept of test project agent installation on Docker containers. So in the next session, I'm going to show you how can you create your Docker container and then install your test project agent along with your browsers and trigger a job. That means run your automation test cases in the Docker agent, okay, in the Docker container in multiple browsers. That means I'm going to show you how can we perform cross-browser testing in Docker container by using test project agents. If you have any queries, please do provide your queries in the comment box. I'll try to reply to your queries. Please do subscribe to the channel, click on bell icon so that you'll receive notifications whenever I publish more videos. Thank you.